Francis Ann Farry, and my age is 68.
68. And where are you from?
Enniskillen.
Yeah. And where do you currently live?
I live in Old Rossari, Sligo Road.
And what are you going to talk about today, Francis?
Just talk about where I was brought up in Kelly's Cottages.
And what time period and sort of around what sort of era are you talking?
Well, I'm 68 now, and I left Kelly's Cottages when I was 15. So I suppose it was in around the 60s and around that time that I would have been brought up there, you know. And Kelly's Cottages was not that far away from the police station, present police station at the minute.
Okay.
Well, Kelly's Cottages, there was 5 houses in a row, and then we turned the corner and went down, and there was another 2, and those were different houses to the other houses that were down on the streets. And our house had 1 bedroom downstairs, a kitchen, a scullery and a pantry. And upstairs there was 2 bedrooms and a toilet outside and a yard that was covered in, half of it was covered in. And I went to Abbey Street School, which wasn't too far from Kelly's Cottages, and was taught there up until I was the age of about 11. I was taught by the nuns in Abbey Street, and it was a nice school. The dining hall actually wasn't attached to the school. You had to walk down Abbey Street and walk past where I would have lived in Kelly's Cottages, around the corner into a dining hall, and everybody would march down every day and got their lunch and then marched back up again. And I spent a lot of time outside playing, had a lot of friends, and everybody played together and everybody looked out for each other, and the like of my parents and other parents all looked out for each other. Nobody was left out and nobody was left short if money was tight or anything like that. I remember our next door neighbour, there was 9 in my family, and I think there might have been something similar in theirs, and if we were short of a bucket of coal, she would give it to us and then we would give it to her, and that type of thing. Everybody played together, and we lived not far from the shore, which is the shore now at the police station, and we would have played there. And the first house in Kelly's Cottages, there was a man, McManus, lived in it, and another man, Adams, Paddy Adams. I think they were related, but I'm not 100% sure. And they had boats. And they would, I can't remember now whether they built boats, but they were always down at the shore and working at boats and that. And as children, Paddy Adams would have taken us down to Devonish Island and that on the boat, which was at that time was a real treat. And we would have spent days down there, and sometimes we might have brought a picnic with us, and you know. But no, I remember it as good times and great people. Great people.
Do you want to tell me a wee bit more about, you said that you all played together and you all looked out for each other. Go into that a wee bit more for me. Maybe tell me about some of the games or songs or rhymes if you can remember them, or the games you played.
Yeah.
Or when you say that looked out, you said about the coal and stuff. And did you have family and vicinity close to you? Or?
No. We had no family in Enniskillen. There was just ourselves. Well, sorry, I'm telling a lie. I had one aunt, and she lived in Cornagrade. Yeah. But my father was from Belfast, so I had no relations in Enniskillen, apart from 3 cousins. That was it. And we would have played rounders, and we would have played handball, and would have just ran round the block, you know, the block of houses, and see who could get there first. And we would have skipped and hopscotch, is that what they call
Yes.
it? Yeah, we would have played hopscotch and things like that, and maybe sometimes we wouldn't have done anything else, only maybe just go down and there was seats at the shore and you might have just sat there, and then on the other streets there was Dame Street, and then there was Carton Park, and I would have had a few friends in Dame Street and I would have gone there to play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And Carton Park is just down where the chapel is at the minute.
Yeah.
And it's a car park is there now, and that was 2 row of prefabs, and they were great houses.
Prefabs, please expand.
They were like tin houses, but Carton Park had them, and there was quite a number of them in it now, and I would have been in and out of a few of those, and from the outside they looked like prefabs because they were like tin, and that's what they're like on the outside. But on the inside, they were a great family home, but they were like a bungalow. They were all on the one level, And you would have gone there, and you would have played with girls there as well. And Head Street was just up from Kelly's Cottages. There was Abbey Street, Strand Street here. Then there was Kelly's Cottages. And then you went along and you went up Mary Street. And at the top of Mary Street, you called that along the top as Head Street. And there was a clinic in there where if you had to get an injection or anything like that, you would have gone in there to get all of that done. And I think the dentist was in there as well. From what I can remember, the dentist was in there as well. Up from police station, straight up Queen Street, which is still called Queen Street today. There was a lady, she was to me now as a child looking back on it, she was a really old lady, very small, all dressed in black. She definitely was like somebody you would have seen way back years ago, even at that time, for me as a child, and she sold paraffin oil. Yeah, she sold paraffin oil, and I can't remember her name, but if the electricity was cut off, we would have gone over there and got paraffin oil and brought it back, and she was no size, but and everything was dark inside. There was no lights on. I think she just lived maybe with paraffin oil, but a lovely wee woman, but that would be one of the memories that I would have of Queen Street.
And the smell. And why I'm asking you about that is because whenever we were doing the excavation, there was a chap came and visited us on one of the days, and he said that if we'd have been digging maybe about 20 metres, 30 metres to the left, we would have been digging in her property.
Yeah.
And it would have been interesting to know that if we could have smelt the paraffin.
Yes. Well, once I knew it was coming here, I started to think about different things, And then at the police station, there was a place on down from the police station, and it was, I think this is the proper pronunciation of it, was called the Militia Hall.
Militia, yeah.
Is that the name of it? Yeah, and there was families lived down there. I think I might have only been there maybe in there once. And I'm not sure whether they were attached to maybe military, or it was just like a big square when you went in, and then there was these few houses in it,
Well, they might have been related to the old military barracks.
Yes, or that would be my reading of it,
Or at least sometime it might have been, but the families in there at that point of your life might not necessarily have
been. It was their home, and that's where they lived, So that would be something that you would remember as well.
Was there much of a difference in the houses compared to where you lived in these houses? And obviously the prefabs would have been quite different.
Yes. Well, the houses that would have been across the road, and that they would have been all like terraced houses, and they were great houses, all right, but they were different what the one that I was in. They would have been, to me as a child looking back, there would have been maybe smaller houses, but I'm sure quite inside they probably would have been equally as big as what we had,
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt that if they had renovated the houses and did them up instead of demolishing all of it, like that was a lot of history that was gone. And if we had had a bathroom, our house was perfect. It was perfect.
And that's a theme that's running through from everybody that I've ever spoke to in the last 2 years. From the back streets or in and around it.
Yeah.
That they wish that the houses could have been sort of developed.
Yes.
Maintained rather than being levelled.
Yeah.
And people being moved to the social housing.
That's right. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether some of the houses in the like of Dame Street or Mary Street, we had cold water out in the scullery. I don't know.
Yours was actually within the house,
in
though?
the house. I don't know whether everybody's was like that. I didn't think they were. No. We did have. And we had a scullery and we had a pantry and, the only thing, we had the outside toilet.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, did everybody have toilets?
Some of them didn't even have an outside toilet.
Yes, I didn't. I thought Kelly's Cottages, there was 5 and 2 was 7. And then in Mary Street, there was 3 more.
Yeah.
And they were all the same type of houses. But that's what I kind of have thought, that some houses didn't have toilets and maybe not have had water,
They had standpipes divided amongst the back rows.
Yes.
That they did. But not anything that was plumbed at your door, unless somebody was lucky enough to get one. To that extent.
Yeah.
And if you were to look back, when you look back on it, then sort of how long you were there till?
I was 15.
Till you were 15. What about the education in school? What way was it hard or?
Yes, well, I felt, now this is only my experience of it, I just felt with the nuns that because you lived where you lived, it wasn't really all that important. You weren't expected to make anything of yourself because of where you lived.
Yeah.
Now that's only my experience,
Yeah.
And I always felt, because when you went outside to play, outside the Abbey Street School, you would have played up and down Abbey Street, and they would have stood outside and that. But even as a child, I still think that they were looking down on you.
Yeah, you could feel it and sense it.
Nobody ever said it.
Yeah.
But that's how I felt about it anyway, And even to this day, if you said to anybody that you came from the back streets, it was just, and yet they were fantastic people. It was an awful shame. And I think I don't know why people thought like that, but they didn't know with any history to it.
Yeah. When your family, you were born and reared in the back streets. When did your family come to the back streets? Do you know anything about sort of?
Well, my father was from Belfast, and my mother and him married over in England. She would have lived in Enniskillen, but her father would have managed a pub. I can't really remember the name of it. And then they would have moved out to live out at the Gran, which is the Gran Monastery. I don't know if you ever heard tell of it or not. They would have lived out there at the Gran, and then my mother went to England and got married and came back, and then lived on the Dublin Road for a short time in what they called was huts. And they lived in there with her mother, and then I think eventually they got the house in Kelly's Cottages. And we were there until we were actually the last to move out of the streets, because when I moved from there, most of the people had moved before us, and they all lived in Kilmaccormack.
Yes.
Whereas when we moved, we lived in Hillview, which was another housing estate, which was across the road, and we would have been one of the last families to leave.
Can you remember the year that you moved?
All I know was I was 15 and I'm 68 now. So,
and for a comparison, then, whenever you moved to the new estate, was that Cornacrea? No, it was
Hillview.
Hillview. So, to reflect from one to the other, what was it like for to move to this new estate, the new house, the amenities, but socially as well, and friendship-wise?
That's right.
And location, what was it like for you?
Well, you see, a lot of the girls that I would have played around with, they would have all lived in Kilmaccormack, which was on down and in another estate. And when we moved to Hillview, we weren't really in Hillview estate. There was 6 houses as you went into it. And then when you went up and round the corner, that's when the estate really opened up. So there was 4 houses in Hillview, and 2 of the neighbours that would have lived with us beside us in Kelly's cottages lived beside us. But their families were up and reared, and we were, they were older people, and I would have lived in Kelly's cottage or in Hillview right up until I got married. But
What year did you get married?
I was 23 when I got married, so was it 77 or something like that? Yeah.
Was there any particular reason why you were the last to leave Backstreets?
I think just that those were the last houses that were going to be taken down. I don't think there was any other reason that I know of anyway.
Can you remember emotionally what it was like to do it, apart from being...
It was an awful change.
Exciting or traumatic, or was it, what was it? Or?
You were, what I would have called, you lived in the town.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you were out of the town, and there wasn't cars or anything about at that time, so you had to walk. So I would have worked in a shop in Darlin Street called the Garden Shop. Conor Maguire.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And I would have worked in there, which meant when I lived in Kelly's cottages, 5 minutes brought me back down.
Yeah.
Whereas when we moved to Hillview, you had to walk past Cornagrade and away up what was past the hospital that's closed now, and away on up to Hillview, which would have taken you the best part of 25 minutes. Which was a big change. Yeah. And you would have lost contact with a lot of the girls, because when you moved school as well, they may have gone to the grammar school, I went to the secondary school, so you lost contact with them.
So it was a huge life-changing event for you and family, really?
Yeah. And we had gone from a range, where my mother would have cooked on the range and all of that, and then you moved up into this house and there was an electric cooker and there was a fire, but it was a door on it, one of those, and there was central heating in it, which was something that we weren't used to at all. I suppose I did enjoy living in Hillview for the years that I was there afterwards, but not as much as that whole sense of community was gone.
Yeah.
That's how I would have felt about it.
And that's what virtually everybody else has been saying.
Yeah.
Albeit that it was a very, very hard life, but it was also the best of life.
Yes. Life was simple, and people only looked for simple things, And even to this day, I would carry that with me. Yeah. As long as I have enough money to do me, and I don't owe anybody any money, I'm quite content.
And a roof over your head and a bed to sleep on.
Yes, and I'm grateful to have it. And I think it's very important never to forget where you came from.
I agree with you 100%.
Did anybody mention to you about Judge's shoe repairs, where we would have gone into the dining hall to get our lunch? If you went down past it and round the corner, there was a house, and it was Judge's house, and they had a shoe repairs place beside it. And on a really cold day, we would have gone in there and we would have chatted to the 2 men that repaired the shoes. And if they needed anything in the shop, we would have gone and got the messages for them and came back and that, And the mother was a wee small tiny woman, Mrs. Judge, and these were the two sons that had the shoe repairs. And even at the police station, because the shop was over beside the police station, Rooney's shop in Queen Street, you would have got to know some of the policemen because they would have been standing on duty outside.
Yeah.
You know.
And were the policemen local at that time?
I don't think so. No.
But you forget that the police station is so relevant to where the backstreet houses were, really.
Yeah,
and it must have formed a huge part of that environment that you lived in at that time.
Yeah, that's right.
Was there much, you saying the policemen were lovely and stuff, was there much interaction or,
Well, it would really only have been with the policeman that was outside because he would have been on guard duty. But I can remember at some stage, now I don't know what age I was, but I remember the Queen coming to the police station.
Really?
If I'm right in what I'm saying, yeah. And we would have gone along and we would have stood in Queen Street while the Queen would have gone down and gone into the police station. Now I'm nearly sure that happened. There's something in the back of my head says that.
We can check sort of in and around the date wise. I mean, it's very possible.
Yeah. But I can remember that vividly now, all right, and all the shops that were in Queen Street. It was Gillen's vegetable and fruit shop, and O'Rourke's that sold the milk. And there was a wee old woman in there, and you could go in and buy buttermilk, and she took it out of is it a churn you would have called it?
Like a churn or a trough.
Yeah, and got a jug and put it into it and all of that, And then the Rooney's had their shop there, and you would have gone in and got whatever bits and pieces that you needed in there. And then O'Reilly's shop was at the top of Queen Street, and it was like a bigger shop. It sold groceries and that, and you went in and got the groceries every day, and then you paid at the end of the week. There was an office, and there was two women working it, and then you went in, and my mother might have sent me or some of the others to go up and
pay like on account yearly.
Yes, whenever you got whatever you got that day, you got a docket, and then you brought it home, and there was a pub attached to that shop as well, O'Reilly's pub. Now, I wouldn't have been in it, but it was quite. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, but 5 shops maybe in Queen Street.
Right. That's quite a few actually in such a small area.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there was a lot of people.
Well, that's it. Well, there's a lot of people in a small condensed area. Which I suppose adds to the reasoning behind knocking them down and moving out and stuff, so it does.
Yeah.
Do you think work-wise, that's what I wanted to ask you about. So you grew up there until when did you start working from a young age, or were you in the back streets when you started maybe your wee job? Or
I was working from I was 12.
12, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would have looked after children.
Oh, right.
In other, that were the man that owned O'Reilly's pub, for example. I would have looked after their children in the afternoon, and some of them were the same age as I was.
You must have been very grown up and adult.
Well, there was 9 in our family, and I was the third in it. So in fact, I would have reared some of my brothers. There was 4 girls and 5 boys, and I would have reared some of the boys. And then there was another family in Wellington Place. I don't know whether you heard tell of Wellington or not.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there was my mother and father would have known the granny in that house, and I would have looked after 2 children there in the afternoon, and taken them out for a walk and that type of thing, And then before I left Kelly's Cottages, I started working in the garden shop, and I would have been there right up until, well, I got married then, I think, at that time, and they sold that and moved to the sports shop on Church Street.
Yes.
And I would have worked in the sports shop up until I got married. And I would have been with them for about, between the both shops, I would have been with them maybe for 11 or 12 years. And then I started to work in the Lakeland Forum down here. And I was there, oh gosh, I was there for about another 10 or 11 years. And some of us were made redundant.
Yes.
And I was one of them. And then I was very lucky because it was very difficult to get into the Western Education and Library Board. And they were looking for bus escorts for children with special needs. And I got a job there, and I worked at that for 25 years, right up until I retired. And loved working with children with special needs.
Sure you did.
Yeah. They were great
really
jobs.
Rewarding job as well.
Yeah.
As well as being very, very beneficial for others.
I had a sister with Down syndrome.
Uh-huh.
She was the second, and then I came after her. And maybe that's why I always had the leaning towards it. But then they would have come in and out of the forum to swim and from the school and that, so a lot of them I would have known anyway, coming in and out. And I was there, as I say, right up until I retired. I was 60 when I retired, so I had worked from I was 12 until I was 60.
Just and you don't have to talk about it if you don't wish to, but you've just said that you had your sister with her disability and Down syndrome. I have never asked this question before. I'm just wondering what that was like growing up for your family and for you. And for her as well in the back streets as well. Was it difficult or?
Well, she didn't live with us until she was about. Well, my memory of it was Pauline might have been 11 or 12 when she came back home. She was in Tower Hill in Armagh.
Yeah.
She was there until she came home. And it was an awful change for her and for us.
Yeah.
Because there was no such thing as visiting or anything like that.
Yeah.
So whilst we knew that she was there and she existed, that was all we knew until she came home.
So you had to establish a relationship and get to know each other.
Yeah. And I can remember when she sat down to get something to eat, she used to put her arm around her food. And we used to think, well, she's doing that because if she didn't do that where she was, somebody would come and take it from her, But her and I had a great relationship. We got on really well together, And one of my sister that was supposed to come with me today, she moved away to England. And my other sister, she was married, and I was the only girl left at home. So her and I would have kind of spent a lot of time together. And then unfortunately, when my mother died when she was quite a young woman, when I say young, 66, I would count that young. And Pauline was never really the same afterwards. And I think it was because even though she could say to you, Mommy's dead and she's in heaven, but you had no concept of what that was, And she kind of went downhill after that, and she took dementia and she died when she was 50.
Oh, bless. That's awful. What? Goodness me.
And she was, whenever I got married and had my own children, if I called in home, she'd say, she'd stand at the door to come with me, and I used to bring her out to my house, and she was very tidy girl, very, very tidy, and she washed the dishes. Nobody else was allowed to help her. And, and I used to think, gosh, if somebody came in here to think that you were making this change, do this. But no, if she washed them, she had to dry them, and she had to put them away.
Just her way. You definitely a lovely relationship with her, which was nice that you were able to have that as well.
And she, if you took her out, if I was going shopping and I took her with me, she would, if you bought her a packet of crisps and a can of Coke, she was all made up.
That was her.
That was her. And she used to say, Frances, I love you.
Oh, sounds lovely. It sounds sad but lovely.
Yeah.
So it does. And a whole new world. If you bought a child a packet of crisps and a tin of Coke nowadays, they just look at you and ask you for the other 50 quid.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So
that's why I still maintain the simple things in life are the very important things.
Yeah.
And if somebody passes away, it's the simple things that causes the...
It is. It causes the memory and the emotion. Absolutely.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
The kindest and smallest of things are sometimes those things that have the most impact on people.
Yes.
They are, which to some people they mean nothing really.
Yeah.
So it is.
And my boys would, to this day, still talk about her. You know, because she had an awful habit of walking about, and she used to pull her trousers up really high, you know, and sometimes when the boys would come home, and my boys were 38 now, and they're twins, identical twins, and sometimes when they're at home, they would walk about and pull their trousers up and they'd say, Mum, who does that remind you of?
But that's nice now that her memory has lasted, albeit it's in a fun way.
Yes.
But, I mean, it's probably quite fitting.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Can you remember anything about, like, your clothes and stuff? This is something I've not asked much people about, what you would have wore, what were your clothes like, and sort of, did you share clothes? Did you get hand-me-downs? And did your mummy make? And
we would have got a lot of clothes from Belfast, where I would have had a lot of cousins. We would have got new clothes, all right, and a man used to come round the doors, and he brought the clothes with him, and then, my mother would have picked whatever it was, and that's what you got. But even as a child, you see clothes. I hated wearing clothes that were somebody else's.
Yes.
And if I thought that the clothes didn't look well, I wouldn't wear them. As young as I was, you know, would always have been very particular about, you know, and I mean, obviously there was 9 of us and a lot of cousins in Belfast, so therefore there would have been a lot of clothes, and they used to come and visit us because we had no way of visiting them, you know, and but I can remember going to school one day and having clothes on me that I did not like. I remember going home and saying to my mother, somebody passed remarks on those clothes and I'm not wearing them tomorrow.
Well, what did you do then?
Probably had to wear them.
Your mother must have been tortured, for I'm sure, like in that time period with a large family. You know, you basically you get what you were given and you wore what you were put on.
That's right. That's right.
It couldn't have been easy.
No, but that was just me, you know, and I liked new clothes and I liked the smell of new clothes and would have always been, because I was one of these people at home would have looked after everybody else.
Yes.
And I would have helped with the washing and would have helped with the ironing and I would have looked after brothers and sisters, and that kind of...
Did it mean a lot to you to get something and you cherished it?
Yes.
You weren't
very
being
much
materialistic about it, but you cherished something and looked after it.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I can remember, now when we're talking about clothes, there was a man lived in Dame Street. I can't remember his name. And I don't know why this happened. But he called to the house one day when we lived in Kelly's Cottages. And he brought me, as what was called in those days, a frock.
Yes.
And a white cardigan. And I think somebody might have made the dress for him. And he gave it to me. And I
wonder what you did to get
it. But I have no memory of why I was given it.
Your mum didn't order it?
No. He gave it to me. He came round and he gave it to me.
Can you remember what it looked like?
Yes. The cardigan was white. And the dress was like stripes of brown and beige and cream. And I remember looking after them like they were gold, because they were new and they were mine. Yeah. You know.
And what about wee shoes and things?
Yes. There was a shoe shop at the top of Queen Street called Gaffney's Shoe Shop, and we would have got our shoes in there. And like that, you would have paid in every week on them, so you went up and you got one pair of shoes and one pair of sandals. You know, and I would have, anything I got that was new, I would have looked after it. You know, and I would have, put them in underneath the bed, and I would have made sure that they were okay and all of that, you know. But I was small and I didn't grow all that much, and there's no such thing as growing out of clothes or anything like that, you know. And but we were always very, very well looked after. Now, we may not have had everything we wanted, but we had everything we needed. And there's a vast difference in that, you know. And the one thing that I can remember is that I never, ever, ever went hungry. Well, now, there wouldn't have been an awful lot of money, but, and as I say, the groceries were bought and paid for at the end of the week, but I never, ever remember not getting dinner. My mother was quite a good cook, and I suppose made up a dinner of very little, you know.
Yeah.
And but no, that was the one thing I could always say, that I never, ever went hungry, you know, which was remarkable really in those days.
I agree completely.